Hi, I'm Siddharth Vardarajan from The Wire, and I will be discussing for the next 10 minutes the significance of the Cobrapost expose on paid news and the promotion of Hindutva politics and the Hindutva agenda through various large media organizations. Today, Cobrapost, which is a website, put into the public domain a total of 27 separate video recordings. These were recordings made surreptitiously by an undercover reporter that it deployed. The reporter took on the identity of a religious/political figure called Acharya Atal, who said he represented an unnamed Sangathan. He, of course, in the course of conversations, allowed the business executives in these newspapers and media houses that he was meeting to believe that the Sangathan was, in fact, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the Nagpur-based RSS, which is the parent of the BJP. But he never himself identified directly as an RSS, as an RSS man. But Acharya Atal approaches a number of, we see in these videos Acharya Atal approaching a number of media organizations. He starts with business executives, typically at the field level in regional offices, dangles the carrot of a lucrative advertising contract with them, and then gradually gets sent higher and higher up the corporate food chain, eventually meeting chief revenue officers and in some cases even the proprietors of media houses. And what emerges from, essentially what Acharya Atal, who is the undercover reporter from Cobrapost, the proposal he presents to all of the media houses that he meets is very simple. He says that I represent this Sangathan, and we want to promote Hindutva in the run-up to the 2019 election. We propose to spend a lot of money in the form of a campaign, and we want to use your media platform to put out material. The campaign will go through 2 or 3 different phases. In the first phase, all you have to do is promote what he calls soft Hindutva, which is the message of the Bhagavad Gita and of Lord Krishna. In one of the meetings, in fact, with Kalipuri of the India Today group, Acharya Atal says that the reason we are going with Krishna and not with Ram and Ayodhya is because the latter are considered too controversial. We feel that by creating an atmosphere through the media of Bhagavad Gita Prachar and Krishna Prachar, this will accustom the electorate to Hindutva politics, and then gradually we will step up our direct political activities. So that was phase 1. In phase 2, the proposal was that he would get these media houses to lampoon the opponents of the Bharatiya Janata Party, Pappu for Rahul Gandhi, Bua for Mayawati, Babua for Akhilesh. And in the final stage, as the election comes closer, Acharya Atal says that the agenda of the Sangathan would be to polarize the electorate on religious lines, on communal lines, and that he hoped that the media house concerned would go along with this part of the agenda as well. Now, it's interesting that this proposal, which really is quite a shocking kind of proposal for any media organization to receive, ought to have led to Acharya Atal being shown the door immediately. Because no self-respecting media organization ought to allow itself to be used by any so-called advertiser or any Sangathan to mold public opinion in this kind of divisive manner or to influence elections in this particular way. Regrettably, of the 27 media houses that Cobrapost approached in this, which is the second part of his expose, only 2 media houses, the Bengali papers Bartaman and Dainik Shambad, only these 2 media houses essentially showed Acharya Atal the door. Every other media house engaged with him, had discussions with him, warmed to his proposal, made embellishments, added embellishments to what he was saying, and took the discussion to a higher and higher level. And as I said, in a few cases, he actually got to meet the owners and proprietors of some of these media houses. Now, to my mind, the 2 or 3 most sensational disclosures made in Cobrapost's expose today concern the Times of India group and the India Today group, besides other groups, of course. But let's start with the Times of India group. It's interesting that Acharya Atal, this undercover reporter, meets a number of Times of India officials, but eventually ends up with the number 2 man and Sanjeev Shah, who then takes him and introduces him to Vineet Jain, who is the managing director and one of the shareholders, one of 3 shareholders of the Times of India group. Now, Times of India group, please bear in mind, is the largest media organization in this country. They own the largest circulating English daily, which is the Times of India, the largest circulating economic daily, which is ET. They own Navbharat Times, they own Maharashtra Times, and they also own one of the most prominent news channels, Times Now, besides, of course, Radio Mirchi, and they are the largest player in the digital space in India. Now, what happens in this meeting between Acharya Atal and Vineet Jain is very interesting. And you can see the videos at Cobrapost's YouTube channel page. They're all available there for you to see. Essentially, Acharya Atal is pushing his agenda that he wants to promote soft Hindutva in the form of Bhagavad Gita and Krishna Prachar. And of course, the Times of India, Vineet Jain readily agrees to this. To my mind, that isn't the most interesting part of that conversation. The most interesting and I would say alarming part of the conversation is when the undercover reporter, Acharya Atal, says that, look, the total amount that we're going to spend with the Times Group as part of our campaign is 500 crore rupees. And we propose to pay only 20% of that by check. And the rest of it we would like to pay by cash. Now, you see initially some hesitation on the part of Sanjeev Shah and Vineet Jain. They say, well, we don't really have much use for cash in our business. We have no use for cash in our business, and we would rather payment be made by check. But when they see that this client of theirs is adamant about paying cash, they then come up with all kinds of suggestions as to how, in fact, Acharya Atal can pay the Times Group using cash by giving the cash to intermediary companies who would then absorb the cash in their business, day-to-day business, and then generate a check, which would then go to the Times of India. So it's interesting that the Times Group was one of those groups that was a very strong supporter of Narendra Modi's demonetization move, which of course the Prime Minister sold to this country as a great step against black money. You will recall, even as the country was reeling from cash shortages, because the government took a long time to print enough money, enough cash, and bring it back into circulation, the Times of India, through the Times Now channel, ran this campaign which they called Remonetize India, where they got various celebrities to say, we support demonetization, and now we should help to remonetize India by not using cash, but by making digital payments. So it's interesting that a company which publicly endorsed what the Prime Minister said he was trying to do, which is to fight black money by fighting cash, can be seen in this video having a conversation with a prospective client about how cash can actually be used to pay for a 500 crore transaction. And I want to also emphasize that 500 crore is no small amount, even for a company like the Times of India. The Times of India last year had a total revenue of approximately 10,000 crore. So 500 crore for one advertising or one advertorial or one comprehensive package deal amounts to 5% of the total revenue of the Times Group. This is an astonishingly large amount of money to be spent by any one client, ostensibly for the promotion of Gita and Krishna. And it would have been obvious to Vineet Jain and the other corporate executives at Bennett Coleman at the Times Group as to what the real purpose behind this kind of money being spent actually was. And I think the fact that they not only entertained such a proposal, but actually encouraged him and helped him, proposed how he could actually make payments in cash, adds a rather alarming dimension, which should concern not just all of us in the media who worry about editorial standards and the inroads that advertising departments are making into editorial, but it should also send alarm bells ringing in the Prime Minister's office, in the Finance Ministry, and above all, in the income tax office. The second conversation of great note and interest is what happens in the India Today office with Kalipuri, who is the number 2 in the, she's a daughter of the owner Arun Puri and really the hands-on management person at the India Today group. And it's interesting, the conversation we see, mercifully, some pushback by Kalipuri when Acharya Atal is unveiling his agenda, and he talks about 3 parts. Kalipuri indicates that the first part is no problem at all. This is the part where the India Today group will help to allegedly promote Bhagavad Gita and Krishna. And in the second part, he says, we will then use this atmosphere created by this material to launch what he calls in-field activities, which may be more polarizing, which may lead to polarization. And at that point, you can see in the video recording Kalipuri a little resistant. She says, well, you can't interfere with editorial, and as editorial, we reserve the right to criticize you. And then she also says that that I'm your friend, and I don't think you should do polarizing activities. But what's interesting is that even though she, in a way, resists some of his suggestions, when Acharya Atal pushes back and insists that as the election campaign draws closer and the election campaign gets more, shall we say, combative, he may be left with no option but to polarize. And so when he sticks to his stand as to what the real purpose behind his entire campaign is, Kalipuri does not end the meeting and say, thank you very much, but we can't really do business with each other. The meeting ends on a very cordial note when she asks him for help in getting Sangh Parivar bigwigs to India Today events. And a few days after the meeting, the Rahul Shaw, who is the Chief Revenue Officer of the India Today group, actually sends an email proposing a advertising campaign worth 275 crore rupees, structured around this so-called idea of Gita promotion and Krishna promotion. Now, again, I want to put this number into some perspective. 275 crore rupees is 20% of the total revenue that the India Today group earned from all sources last year. So you can imagine, you can understand why this meeting appeared to be very important enough for Kalipuri to take part in it, important enough for Kalipuri to express her reservations, but nevertheless go along with the agenda of this rather shady Acharya Atal and his very, very divisive agenda. Apart from these two media groups, you also have recordings with the Hindustan Times group, which is one of the largest newspaper groups, where the line between advertising and editorial appears to be breached. We hear executives offering editorial support, what they call editorial support for the Acharya's activities as an advertiser. And I think that this is something, again, which should occasion great worry and introspection on the part of all of us in the profession. Apart from these well-known newspaper houses, lots of regional TV channels, local TV channels. Open Magazine is approached and offered 3 crore and responds very, very positively to this offer. And all told, it's a rather dismal picture that gets painted when 25 out of 27 media houses essentially find the offer that Acharya Atal makes irresistible from a commercial point of view. And only 2 newspapers, as I said, and I want to repeat because in a way this is a full credit to them. This is Bartaman and the Dainik Shambad, who essentially reject this proposal, but otherwise 25 of the 27 basically embrace the idea that somebody can come in off the streets, offer a huge amount of money, and the media platform then makes itself available for the promotion of Hindutva in one form or the other, despite knowing that what Acharya Atal is really trying to do is to polarize the electorate and favor one party over its rivals in the run-up to the 2019 election. Now, that's as far as the broad contents of Cobrapost's expose today are concerned. I want to draw things together and make 2 or 3 observations about the real significance of this expose and what it tells us about the state of the media. The first point, by way of a summary of what this entire exercise, Cobrapost calls it Operation 136, where the number 136 comes from India's ranking in the World Press Freedom Index. And this is really a telling comment on the state of the media, right? Because what this sting operation demonstrates is that when it comes to the bulk of big media in India, profit is king. Media houses are prepared to go to any length to earn revenue, even if this means jettisoning editorial integrity, even if this means promoting material that they know, they have been told will be divisive, will be polarizing, will be politically partisan in some way. But as long as it brings the rupees in, we find media houses from big to small embracing this source of revenue because profit is considered the most important factor, much more important than any other value. The second is, of course, related to the idea of profit being king, which is that in media house after media house, management has supplanted editorial as the primary decision maker. So this proposal that Acharya Atal makes, we often see people in management making commitments that in an ideal world should not be decisions that are up to them. What gets covered in a newspaper or magazine or television channel as news really belongs to the editors, really belongs to the reporters. People on the advertising side, people on the management side ought not to be playing any role in deciding content, least of all in deciding that certain items can be shown or not shown based on what kind of revenue they generate. But we see, and this has been happening for a long time, that the Chinese wall separating the advertising department and the editorial department as far as the decision of what to publish is concerned has been breached. And what we have seen in Cobrapost expose is in many ways the logical culmination of this breach between the advertising and, or rather, of a logical consequence of the advertising department acquiring a dominant position over editorial. The third point, which is really quite alarming, is that cash is king. It shouldn't surprise us because a lot of political parties use cash, and it is interesting that of all the measures that Arun Jaitley announced as finance minister when it came to political funding reform, there wasn't really any serious or concerted effort to stamp out black money in politics. If anything, I would argue that his system of anonymous bonds, for example, and various other things has reduced the amount of transparency when it comes to political funding. But a simple measure like insisting that no political party can accept a donation from somebody who doesn't do a KYC, right? I can't sign up with Paytm. You can't open a bank account without filling out forms, without giving your Aadhaar number. Why can't a simple reform like insisting that a donor to a political party cite his or her Aadhaar card number be accepted by the finance minister? They don't want to do it because the lack of transparency in political funding is what allows big money to have its way in national politics. So cash is king when it comes to politics, and it shouldn't surprise us that this cash essentially finds its way into media, and the fact that big media houses, despite echoing the official propaganda about the war against black money, are willing to embrace cash, are willing to encourage clients to, or are willing to find ways for clients to spend cash rather than insisting that payments happen through bank transactions or checks, is something which should worry all of us because it tells us exactly how far from the truth Modi's claim that he is cleaning up the political system really is. And the last point, or the final point, you will recall when the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke, the kind of outrage that was felt around the world, but even in this country, where I remember seeing Ravi Shankar Prasad, law minister, saying that we will investigate and take strict action to deal with any attempts to subvert the electoral mandate of people or to to influence the electorate in any way. But here you have a textbook case of media house after media house succumbing to the lure of crores of rupees and agreeing to misuse its media platform in order to influence public opinion in a particular direction. And I think we all know that the media plays an influential role in deciding the public agenda, and we might always have suspected that political factors, business factors all play a role in deciding what that agenda is. But here you have a classic, you have an open and shut case of how easy it is for somebody with money to approach even large media houses that you would have thought had no reason to entertain such people. But even large media houses embrace and warmly welcome such offers and are willing to promote their political agenda for a fee. And essentially, this tells us that the Indian media, far from serving as a searchlight, far from serving as the fourth estate, as an independent pillar that helps the public to subject those in authority to scrutiny, rather the Indian media as an institution and all its constituent parts, large private companies, etc., are all willing to make themselves available to the highest bidder. And I think that this really paints an alarming picture, not just about the state of the media, but more importantly, about the state of Indian democracy and the future of Indian democracy itself. These, to my mind, are issues, very, very serious issues that the Cobrapost expose has raised. It's unfortunate that the Delhi High Court issued an ex parte injunction yesterday to block publication of that part of Cobrapost's expose which concerns the Dainik Bhaskar group, which is one of the largest Hindi newspaper in the country. Rather than encouraging greater debate and transparency and allowing this kind of investigative material to be published and to circulate, sadly, many media houses, one media house has already run to court. I gather from the Cobrapost editor Anirudh Behel that he is getting legal notices now, threatening him with legal action, with defamation and lawsuits of one kind or the other, unless he removes the videos that he's put up on YouTube immediately. It's regrettable that instead of using this expose as, shall we say, an occasion to clean up their act, big media in this country is resorting to threats, is resorting to invoking their considerable, the firepower at their disposal to file cases against a small platform like Cobrapost. To my mind, this is really a sign for the public at large to treat everything they read in big media with some degree of circumspection, if not suspicion, and for you to be very careful about the authenticity of the news that you read, and to, and I say this even though I'm an interested party, as somebody who helps run an independent platform. I think this episode that Cobrapost has brought before us, this expose that it has brought before us, underlines more than anything else the importance of public support for independent, vibrant journalism, such as what Cobrapost has presented, such as what The Wire and other platforms stand for. Thank you very much for watching.